how can we reconcile, on the one hand, taking it? Here we're talking about Moshe taking it. Is that clear? You're going to take for me the Terumah. But there it says they're going to be giving from their generosity. So number one, why does it say V'kuli and then Trumati at the end of the verse? Rashi says when you said Eitan, Li is Lishmi. You're going to take for me a Terumah, which we're going to explain in a moment. What is a Terumah? What kind of offering maybe Dor really meant? And that is for my sake. And Terumah, Rashi says, Hafrashat, to set it aside. Yafrishu li mimamonam nidava. They will set aside for me from their resources a volunteer giving, a nidava, a volunteer giving. So Terumah is to raise up and volunteer from your resources for the sake of whatever commandment we're about to learn here. Now let's relate to the word Terumah being mentioned 3 times. Rashi has all of the oral Torah in front of him. He knows the Gemarot and all the Midrashim. And he brings Amru Rabotenu, see, please follow me. He's now quoting a Gemara in Masechet Megillah. Shalosh Trumot Amurot Kan. Okay, the question will be obvious. If 3 times the word Terumah is mentioned here, what does it stand for? And now Rashi brings us from the oral Torah 3 generated donations. Achat Trumat Beka Lagulgola Chenasumem Adanim. We're going to learn that there are going to be boards to this Mishkan, and the boards, the bottom of the boards will be placed inside these sockets. These Adanim, they will hold and secure the boards of the Mishkan. And since this is the base, the basis of the Mishkan boards, everyone will give a donation, as it states later on in Eila Pikudei, chapter 38. So one Terumah is referring to generating donations for the making of the Adanim, the base of the boards. Another one, Ve'achat, and this will be Tikhu. You have to take a Terumah from everyone for that. Another taking, that you have to take it from them. Ve'achat Terumat HaMizbeach. What is the donation for the altar? Beka la Gulgola. I didn't explain, but the word Beka la Gulgola is referred to. This past Shabbat was also called Shabbat what? Remind me? Shekalim. We read the section about the mitzvah of giving a chatzi shekel. Chatzi shekel is of a weight of silver, pure silver. Whatever the rate is in the market, and there's a certain weight, so you multiply by that everyone would have to give. For what? Rashi says here, lekupot. We would have these boxes inside the Mishkan or the Mikdash, liknot mem korbanot tzibur, like a charity box, kupa. Okay, and you go to the cashier at the makolet, and that cashier is called a kupa, and the person working behind the kupa is called a kupai, or a woman, kupait, right? So the second Terumah is for everyone's donation to finance public sacrifices. Can you give me an example, Chaim, of a public sacrifice?
Public sacrifice? Pesach sacrifice?
No, that is a private one. Steve, you have an idea? What is a public sacrifice for the tzibur, for the entire public? I didn't ask you to answer the question. Can you hold this guy down just a little? Just take care of him after the show, please. Ketoret. Very good. Can you? No, we can't smell it yet. For the ketoret, when it's offered every day, both morning and afternoon, is an example of public sacrifice. Now you can open up your mouth. You have another example? I didn't ask you. 1 second. No, giving him a chance to speak. I'm sorry, Aaron. Tomorrow, right? Rosh Chodesh offering is also a public sacrifice. Another example. Give me something of every day. The daily tamid offering. Dan taran, tamid, always. There's a daily offering brought both in the shacharit and in the mincha. Okay? These are public sacrifices. No. Money. How's it going to be financed? Answer. A terumah that everyone must give a half shekel. This is terumah number 2. The first one we said is to generate monies to make the base of the boards called the adanim. Yes? And now we're up to terumah number
3. Oh, we just said 2.
So we just said 2 up to number 3. Rashi says, Ve'achat trumat Mishkan. Nidvat kol echad ve'echad. Notice which word Rashi used now. He didn't use in the first 2. Which word does he use? Nidvat. What is a nidava? Nidvat libo. Generosity of the heart. Let's repeat and review. 3 trumot exist. When I read the Chumash, I'm lost. I don't know what they're talking about. We need the oral Torah. In this case, Rashi brings us the Talmud. 3 trumot signify 3 separate donations. 2 are taken, and you have to give a what? A half shekel worth. 1 for the adanim, the base of the boards, and the other for financing the korbanot tzibor, public sacrifices. The third one is nidvat libo. Did you get this? Third one is whatever you want to do. And now you have a multiple choice. You can bring from any one of what? The 13 materials. Is that clear now? 2 mandatory half shekels, and 1 you have silver. Now, you see the guy next to you, he was curious where we got the silver and gold. A lot of us got it from the cavalry of at the Kriyat Yam Suf, and a lot of others took it from our Egyptian friends, Mustafa and Rahman, right? We knew exactly where in their cupboards and which closets they had gold and silver, because when they had the decree of Choshech, darkness, we had light even inside an Egyptian house. And then we went knocking on the doors. Can we please borrow your gold and your silver? Oh, of course, take it. It was a miracle. God gave the grace of the Egyptians. So we dealt with this in this shiur several times. Machloket Rishonim, that this was a scheme. According to the Tzivul, it was a scheme that they sensed that were being, they're being manipulated, and now they'll be motivated to and run after us in order for the big thing to happen at Kriyat Yam. So that's one meaning. The other meaning, lish'ol, is really to achieve, to ascertain as yours. And I think he used to work for the Department of Commerce. Did they owe us any money for the work we've been doing? 1 or 2 months of salaries? The Egyptians, for the hard work, the overtime? Were we paid for all that work?
I don't think the check cleared yet.
The check didn't clear. They didn't pay us for decades. You know how much money they owe us? So therefore, there's no moral problem whatsoever taking the silver and gold. Follow our own.
But it's not considered like dirty or something?
It's clean because God said to do it. And again, we have the other answer in order to get them to be motivated. Come after us, Mr. Ranan.
Most of this gold and silver also it's earned by Yosef.
From his treasury. Beautiful.
So it's like
okay.
Jewish guy earned.
Okay. Now what about materials? Tchelet, argaman, v'tolat shani, wool. We have from our animals wool. Sheish linen we took out as well. We took out bigadim. We took out clothing. Izim we have. Orot elim, no problem. We're going to dye them. We found apparently from the vegetative world how to use dyes. And atzei shitim is plenty. Where they got shemen la ma'or, I don't know. Where they got the oil, maybe there were olive trees in the midbar there, I don't know. And spices that could probably get there. And there are sellers, people traveling through the deserts en route to Egypt or other places from India, I don't know. And they're buying spices. And the stones, they had these fine stones. The Talmud does say there were a lot of atzei shittim. Now, what is the objective? What is the objective for building a Mishkan? There are two classic approaches. One, the Rambam, and the other, Ramban. The Rambam writes in his Mishnah Torah, in the laws of Beit HaBechira, mitzvah lasot mikdash kedei mukhan lakriv korbanot. I repeat, a positive mitzvah to build a mikdash, so it's ready to sacrifice their sacrifices. Some explain that we need the sacrifices in order to atone. And therefore, it is as if, if we'd be in a better situation, we wouldn't need not the sacrifices and not the mikdash. That's how some explain the Rambam. It's like a b'diavad situation. God saw into the upcoming failure called the sin of the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf. Although there are others that write that through the sacrifice, we'll get to that in Parashat Vayikra, when we start learning the variety, right before Pesach, I think it'll be the last Shabbos we're learning here, the last week, that the korbanot from the Shoresh, Kuf, Reish, Bet, Karov, closeness. Through the korbanot, the Jewish people get closer to God. That's how maybe in a simple way, at the edge of a Ktsei Mazleg, as we say in Hebrew, we're explaining the Rambam's approach. Different than that is the Ramban. A very, very important Ramban, and I have to develop the idea, but I'm going to use it, basically what he said, and it's led to us by your good question, David, and I think you're going to get a good answer here. We just finished the great stand at Sinai. The relationship between God and Israel is like panim bepanim. At least the Ten Commandments. We heard God's voice. Not one man, not 10 idiots, not 20 drunkards, but millions of Jewish people, men, women, and children heard after mental, psychological, physical preparation, as we learned. They heard God, through prophecy, speak the Ten Commandments. And now He's taught us, Moshe Rabbeinu, after God teaching Am Yisrael, the Mishpatim, we learned about the Sefer HaBrit at the end of the last matter. How can we congeal? How do we solidify that moment, that experience of the Ten Commandments, of we being recipients of prophecy? How does it continue? This ongoing level of closeness to God between God and the nation of Israel. Didn't He tell us as a prelude to the Ten Commandments, quote, Vatem tiyuli mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. How do we continue to be so special as a holy nation? Could it be that God's plan, His initial plan is that we're going to be holy and distinct by building a physical structure, a bayit for God on earth, in the land there, and that the focal point of this mikdash / Mishkan is for God to continue His divine presence amongst the Jewish people. In other words, to solidify that level of God's presence, the word we call in Hebrew, Shechina, okay, is by building a mikdash according to the builder's guide. There are going to be hundreds upon hundreds of details, measurements, colors, materials, sizes, position, location. It's going to have to be through the exact guide of the planner, who is God. And when that will be built, and therefore He's starting off with all the details, when all the details are consummated, when all the exact measurements are going to be used, we hence have a house for his name. And there, the objective of the Mikdash will not be outside, open to the sky, which, as you know, the famous Mishnah in chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot would talk about that rain would never extinguish the fire over the Mizbeach, in spite of the fact that we're under the sky. And another 9 miracles that would happen there, as the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot explains to us. No, that's not where God's presence is going to come down. Maybe it's inside, in the Kodesh. Mizbach Torah to here, the Shulchan to here, the menorah over there. No. Not there as well, in that covered roofed area called the Kodesh, the Holy. But there's going to be a parochet, a mechitza, a partition, separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And what kli or vessel will be on the other side of this partition? Only one kli. That we will not work on it, not serve God on it. It'll be a kli called the Aron HaKodesh. The Aron HaKodesh made out of gold and wood. And there, it will have 2 poles through rings on its sides, as we'll learn tomorrow. And those poles will be inserted inside the rings. And on top of the Aron will be this angelic-like, this baby-like structure built from a chisel and a hammer, from a gold block. On top of the Aron, there's two matters called the Keruvim. These cherubim, what do they call them in English or Latin?
Cherubim.
Cherubim? Okay. From the word kruv. Did you eat kruv on Shabbos? Every Shabbos we eat kruv.
Cabbage.
Why is anything that has a head is called a kruv? It had a head-like structure. So a head of lettuce, a kruv, a head of this. And in between the wing extension of those 2 kruvim, will God's voice come down and be heard in the Mishkan to the prophet Moshe Rabbeinu and others. In other words, place for the rest, to rest the Shekhinah, which is by the Aron. And therefore, after we finish this section today, and we begin seeing the kelim, the instruments, the vessels of the Mishkan, the Torah will start only with the Aron first. And there it'll be stated, see it together with me right now, in verse 22. You see already there, regarding the Aron, and I'm reading in Pasuk Kavbet, verse 22 of chapter 25, the objective of the Aron, l'chaim. V'no'adeti lecha sham. Do you see it? We're looking at verse 22. V'no'adeti lecha sham. Don't believe me, look inside. V'no'adeti lecha sham. And I will designate to meet you there. There meaning at the Aron. V'dibarti itecha, and I will speak with you me'ala kaporet. Excuse me, would you take the Sefer Torah out of the Aron HaKodesh? Yeah, you. What is that curtain called? What? Gentlemen, it has the same letters, but in different order. Parochet and Kaporet. All my students for all the years, some would be a little confused and mixed up. That's why I purposely asked you. But you said it right the first time. Did you not? No. One of you said Parochet. It's called the door. Okay. So it's Parochet. We open up the partition before the Holy Ark, but the covering over the Ark is called a Kaporet. It explains, is the divine revelation existence between God and Israel above the Aron, and therefore now we can go back to the actual obligation at the end of the section we learned today in verse, was it 8 or 9? V'asuli migdash. It doesn't say v'shachanti betocho. I'm going to dwell in it, in the Mikdash or the Mishkan, betocham, in Israel. The metaphysical formula of God for the ongoing solidification of God's presence in Israel is the building of the Mishkan, so that God's presence continues to dwell in Israel. And just like God said that from the heavens, I have had you be able to hear the voice, so too will the voice continue in the Mishkan. In other words, the Sinai revelation will continue through the existence of the Mishkan, God's voice speaking through here. Questions or matters? Ranan.
Forward.
On that, thank you. Door.
So, what's the point of the Mishkan of Aaron?
Hashrat Shechina.
No, but I'm saying, but if you said that the Shechina is going to be Tucham,
But it has to go, it's going to only come down in a particular place, and that'll be a sign that God is present in Israel. This is the formula for God's presence in Israel. His voice will come down in the Holy of Holies, above the Aron, above the Kaporet, in between the wing expansion of the two Kruvim. That is the ultimate objective according to Ramban. Otherwise, the Rambam said no, the mitzvah is to bring korbanot. Okay, we'll stop here.